he was one of the first to really call every state a border state. He saw this border crisis coming a long time ago. He joins us from the state of Georgia, Congressman Austin Scott. Congressman, great to have you on the show today.
Hey, John and Amanda, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for joining us. A very big day. Joe Biden's been on a tour celebrating Bidenomics, and most Americans don't seem to be buying it. But you have an electric vehicle firm that President Biden championed. It files for bankruptcy, even though it was the face of some of the green agenda. And meanwhile, a traditional trucking company, which moves all of our shipping goods across the country, also files for bankruptcy. 30,000 employees in danger of losing their jobs. Bidenomics doesn't seem to be working. You've been warning about this. It seems like some of the evidence is starting to become very clear to the American people.
Yeah, I mean, the yellow freight issue is, I think that's a perfect example of how if you give the unions too much control over a business, then the business can't survive. And there's got to be balance between what's good for the employees and what's good for the operations of the company. We all recognize that. But ultimately, a business has to cash flow. And so you carry that forward into what they've done with the electric buses, and they can put out all the cash, all the subsidies they want to. But if a business can't cash flow because people don't want their products, then that business is not going to be able to survive. And so unfortunate for the trucking industry that one of our biggest ones has gone down. It's going to be interesting to see what it means for other people in the freight business. And I hope it's not a sign of times to come for the transportation industry, but we've seen a huge shift under this administration in what's right for the business as a whole, which means the employees as well, and what's right for unions. And if this continues, you'll probably see more bankruptcies because businesses simply won't be able to cash flow.
Yeah.
Well, and you bring up a really scary aspect of this because Yellow Trucking, a 94-year-old company, and typically the longer a company is in operation, the more resilient and robust they are. They made it through the Great Depression. They made it through World War II. They made it through the Carter years, but they couldn't survive Bidenomics. And I worry about farmers across America and the connection to that with our supply chain, because if truckers can't move product, then the product sits on farmland, rots, and is basically destroyed or goes to waste.
Yeah, that's right. And so especially with fresh fruits and vegetables, I mean, the timeline from when you pick that crop to the time it needs to actually hit the grocery store shelf is very limited. And so we have to have a transportation system that functions, and the logistics of it have to get the product there on time. And so when you take a major carrier out, as products shift, you're going to probably look at increased costs of transportation because of less competition. And that typically drives up prices. And so, we pay for that in everything that we do, including our groceries. And so just like your electric bill, when the electric bill goes up at your house, it also goes up at the grocery store where they're running all of that refrigeration. And just like when your gas bill goes up, the diesel bill on the farm goes up, and the diesel bill to get the product to the grocery store goes up. All of those things are embedded in what we pay for as a consumer. And I will tell you, I do not sense that inflation is easing in any way, shape, or form in this country. And the Americans that are out there working every day are getting pressed more and more to make ends meet.
Yeah, it is really extraordinary. Sir, you've been one of the most cogent voices in arguing on the importance of why we need to keep fighting Russian aggression, help Ukraine. But you also have warned repeatedly that Joe Biden hasn't done enough to explain to the American people what our strategy, our end game, what victory represents. Now we're starting to see a change in the polls. New poll out, 55% of Americans oppose giving more aid to Ukraine, feeling like we've done enough already. This is a CNN poll, I think, came out just a couple days ago. I know you warned that the president was in danger of losing the public on this. How important is that shift, and what should the president do if he wants to keep support to change the dynamic?
Yeah, this is one of those issues where the lack of a coherent and consistent message is allowing the narrative that we shouldn't be there to take precedent over why we are sending our weapons and support to Ukraine. I will tell you that I do not believe that Russia was going to stop at Ukraine. If you look at their influence in that region, they already have a tremendous amount of control in Belarus. They're already across the border in Georgia and in other countries in that area. I do believe that Russia wants to control the Black Sea. If you look at the impact that that has on the global food supply and inputs, everything, from nitrogen and potash that we use in fertilizer to grow the crops here in America and around the world. I will tell you the lack of the coherent and consistent message, I think, is the reason that Americans have shifted some of their support. I do not sense much of a shift from those of us who are on the Armed Services Committee or the Intel Committee, and those of us who are actually seeing more of the facts of what's happening over there. But we have to have the support of the general public. And when you don't have a leader who's able to articulate to the American citizens why it's important that we don't let an authoritarian like Vladimir Putin simply take over a neighboring country because he's going to take over the next one as well, it creates a problem. And so I believe we should be supporting Ukraine. I think that the consequences of not supporting them and the cost of not supporting them ends up being significantly larger for the American taxpayers long term than it is in supporting them. And if we withdraw our support today, I think Russia would take over the country and therefore the Black Sea, basically. And understand this: we're not as Americans in this fight alone. Right. We are giving a lot of support to them, but there are other countries that are our allied countries that are also giving a lot of support to them. And I would ask you to remember this: we abandoned our partners in Afghanistan. So these same NATO partners that had men and women on the ground and equipment on the ground in Afghanistan, we abandoned them. We did not uphold our end of the deal to our NATO partners that were fighting with us in Afghanistan. And if we turn around and abandon them now, the stain on America's credibility, it will take decades to overcome. And he's responsible for both of these, by the way.
Yeah, good point.
Congressman, I want to shift gears to something you've been really vocal about, and it is this strange dichotomy between the way that the Bidens are treated by the justice system and how President Trump is treated. And you tweeted out about this, and something that was so remarkable to me that I guess has come to me in the weeks since that plea deal for Hunter Biden fell apart. We all know why it did, because Judge Narika asked just a couple questions because she saw something embedded in the last portion of this plea agreement. And we were two questions away from Hunter Biden having basically blanket immunity for this entire time period. Can you imagine if that type of plea deal was given to President Trump, the reaction from Democrats?
Oh, it would be, I mean, they would go berserk. I mean, like they would have to put cushions up around the walls because they'd be bouncing off of them and they would hurt their head if they didn't. But it is this double standard, Amanda, that scares me the most from our democracy going forward. And so, I look at what they're doing to President Trump right now, and I look at all of the multiple avenues that they're trying to take to convict him of a crime. I do believe, and this is just Austin Scott, I do believe that they will at some point convict him of something like an obstruction of justice charge. I think that their whole goal is to get a federal conviction against him. It will be a procedural conviction against him, but ultimately, if they get a federal conviction against him for a felony, then they believe that the laws are going to keep him off of the ballots in a certain number of states. Now, what does that do to the Republican Party? It would send us into a convention where, we would not have a Republican nominee for president then, and it would create tremendous chaos inside the Republican Party. And the only hope for Biden and Harris to win is to create the chaos inside the Republican Party. Yeah. So they want to talk about election interference. Look at what they're doing. If they don't like Donald Trump,
we're going to be watching that dynamic really closely. We're about to hit a commercial break. Sorry to cut you off there, sir. We're going to take a quick